suppose the hardest part of this is to try and summarize a day, and I feel like saying I've got a terrible headache, but it's a nice headache because there's so much information kind of going around my head at the moment as to what great messages we got today, what critical things we have to start thinking about, and how we're going to try and take that forward, not only internally within SEI here in Asia, with our partners in SEI around the world, but also with all of the other partners that were here. So there's quite a lot that we have to try and challenge ourselves with and take that forward, which essentially for me is what we wanted to do in this whole forum, is to try and challenge ourselves, question ourselves, and think through what strategies, what approaches we need to take forward. And I think there's quite a lot on that. So I'm going to try and quickly touch on a number of points that came up. And it's a challenge also when we say let's speak the same language, but let's make sure we hear the same message. So I'm reading notes from another person to try and put them into my language. Let's see if this all translates properly. But at the start of the session when we opened up, we looked at some of the critical questions we had there. As policymakers are faced with uncertainty and unknowns. And this is one of the challenges that maybe climate change is multiplying that and making it more difficult for people to make decisions. Research can provide the evidence for this and try to tie down some of those uncertainties and help give the policymakers a frame for decisions moving forward. We can play that role. But also the policymakers need to uncover why local environmental problems arise in the first place, so we don't end up repeating problems by understanding the context, changing the context moving forward. And I came back to a point that was made earlier about building back better. Maybe sometimes we should start thinking about building forward better so that we avoid a lot of the damage or destruction through disasters and that we build resilience into infrastructure, into development moving forward. We talked about researchers therefore need to reach decision makers and the public in time and with information that is actionable so that we can avoid some of the issues moving forward. We had some support then through CEDA, who, with Anne Charlotte, was talking about supporting the work they want to do in research, which we think is very encouraging for us. And they're saying that this is crucial to ensure that environment, development, and gender and human rights are integrated into decision making. These are key elements within our strategy itself, so we're happily aligned to some of the way they're thinking, but also we see that it's important that we have this inclusiveness and this equity in our thinking moving forward. Three keywords that Stefanos gave us from UNESCAP I thought were very, very interesting, and the picture in particular. Looking at modernization, we need to look at the technologies and the capacities we have to develop more modern infrastructures. And we can make those infrastructures green through embedding in decision and policy making the proper approaches to that. But we need to do that through a transparent method. So making sure that it is indeed inclusive, it's integrated, and it's in partnership from research through to community, through to policymakers and government. We also talked a little bit with Chulalongkorn University, which again, thankfully today we're signing off on that, or we signed off on the MOU. Thank you, Johan, for that. But they talked about an aging society and how we're going to deal with that as we move forward. Maybe we need to reflect upon the needs of that society and how we develop with them. And I like the words he said in creating a happier future. Sometimes we think we forget that word in everything. We do need to create a more enjoyable and a happier future moving forward. We then brought up three kind of very speed dating process of looking at energy, urbanization, and water resource management that SEI is pushing forward. And I thought it was important to do so to make sure, A, that you understand some of the breadth of the work that we're doing, but it's also critical for moving forward on a more sustainable path. Energy with, God, his name has just gone from my head, Oliver, sorry, he's taken that forward. Discussed a little bit about the effects of destabilization of the existing energy systems and how we need to revamp that and address the gender imbalances within that, which came up on a number of different discussion topics through the day. And obviously supporting a low carbon development pathway. So we'd be encouraged to see where we can join partners on that. And urbanization talks about the impacts of infrastructural effects, the quality of life in urban areas, which links into Chulalongkorn's kind of future plans. About the co-creation of knowledge and the co-designing of solutions, which SEI is trying to work with not only here in Asia, but through partners around the world. To look at the impact of infrastructure on cognitive and physical health, to make sure we're creating a place where people actually want to live and enjoy living. It's important to take that forward. And again, between strengthening the links then between local knowledge, citizen science, policy, and the key knowledge gaps that are there so we can fill those gaps and provide a more robust approach moving forward. And I think in a number of different sessions that we had, people talked about natural resources in a number of different ways, and lots of you know, the positive growth that is happening in many societies is naturally depleting the resources, and we've got to turn that around so that we're not running ourselves out of potential future resources. We also got to make sure that beyond creating sustainability in it, that we create equitable growth for others. I think then within moving forward, a number of discussions talked around collaboration, about empowerment, and making sure that together as partners, and this is key for me in this forum, you know, I'm here 1 year and I'm trying to develop a lot of relationships, but how do we come together to co-create ideas? And there were good examples given from within the DRR example there with disability, in that not only are we looking at people with disabilities as victims, but we're engaging them to understand the context properly, to support them to do the research, to write up the results, and to take charge of the actions moving forward. So it's not about us and them, it's about together creating a solution moving forward. And we can do more of that if we develop more citizen science and integrate the people into both undertaking some of the research, but by doing that they get engaged in it, they get interested in it, and they want to make the change themselves. But to go further, we need to go a little bit higher to look at more of the ministries that should be involved in this, not traditionally work in the Ministry of Finance or the Ministry of Infrastructure, but we need the Ministry of Ministry of Environment first. We need the Ministries of Finance. We need to work with the banking sectors to make sure that they're fully embedded on the road towards sustainability. And in this way, avoid creating silos in how you think. So working with one ministry to get one response and working with a second to get another. We need to bring them together to sit around the same table in order to get solutions that are sustainable. Looking under some of the SDGs that we were talking about with Dr. Babette, Resurrection, the question was asked, can increased participation sort out gender equality here in the Mekong region? And some of the responses were kind of no, because of economic resources, because of the power structures that exist, and because of cultural inertia. Which means that women are generally caught up in a system where it's an advantage to put them on the sidelines. And that clearly is not acceptable, and it's not sustainable either. We need to look at participation and consultation, and not just as a kind of sticky plaster solution to the problem, but as a much more robust system taking this forward and trying to create and mobilizing women's participation, not after decisions have been made beforehand, so they can be fully embedded in that. We talked about SDGs as can they change power structures and economic systems? We think they can, but we then need to make sure they're fully integrated into the various ministries and make sure that all the private sector, the civil society sector, and the business sector, let's say the government sector, are discussing this together around the same table. And I kind of mentioned this a little bit myself with a few people. Just if we cannot sit people around the same table and dialogue about this, what we're having is that various SDGs are trying to find their own solution, not understanding how that might impact on a second SDG. And if we don't sit down around the same table and discuss this, we're not going to find the optimal solutions. So certainly we would encourage SEI and partners to coordinate a lot more moving forward. I think also within the disaster, or reducing disaster risk, we came up with a number of points that talked again about collaboration, about working with local information, and by placing people at the center of the disaster risk reduction efforts. I think that's also going to be critical. We looked at some of the trade-offs, examining equitable resilience, promoting transformative governance. Again, the impact of governance. Where are we integrating the right people, making the right decisions that involves everybody's understanding of the context? I think really overall, one question that did actually was, why should we invest in resilience? With 1/3 of it being lost, 1/3 of development dollars being lost to further impacts from disasters, it's very clear that if we can reduce the impacts of disasters, the impact of development financing will be better in the long run. So it's clear that trying to create resilience and trying to reduce the impacts of the unfortunately increasing scale of disasters, particularly in this region, is critical to make sure that our investments are lasting. And not only from bilateral donors and so forth, we need to look at the private sector investments, and we need to make sure that they're engaged in a similar process moving forward. A couple of points about working with the youths, working with citizen science, to try and make sure that we integrate fully the knowledge from the future generations that we're trying to support with. And I think that's going to be something that we should take on board more here. It's working with the youth in the universities, making sure that we're building both their understanding of the situations, but also making sure that they're becoming the solutions to some of the situations. And I think overall, I think it's given us quite a lot of ideas to stop and think about, quite a lot of partnerships that we need to try and develop, not just the existing ones we have, but new ones that we can see coming from these dialogues, so that we take a more constructive approach to the partnership ideas, that we take a more holistic approach to how we solve some of the problems that we're facing. And it's interesting that in all of the different sections that we talked about today, we looked at water resource management, we looked at the energy sector, urban growth issues, we looked at human health, inclusiveness, gender equality, social equity, resilience planning, adaptation. All of these interact with each other. If we solve one of these problems without kind of assessing and reviewing the others, then it comes back to haunt you. So they have to be integrated. So it's not just one problem can be solved and then we move on to the next one. We've got to work at them together. And that's a massive challenge for us moving forward. There was one comment that was, hits home particularly for an organization like ourselves, that, scientists are risk averse. And maybe so. Maybe we're good at producing the data, but we're not good at putting our head on the chopping board and saying, this is exact science, this is exactly what's going to happen. But I think we've got to get bolder in approaching that as well, by being able to communicate our work in a better way, making sure that it is policy relevant, so that the decision makers can clearly see not just the scientific data that we have, but the impacts of that data and how it may impact financially, because unfortunately that's where the decisions are being made. So we need to be bolder about how we promote the work that we do. We're not telling people what to do, we're offering options based on science, based on evidence. So I think as an organization here, we intend to get a lot stronger on both the communication side and on the policy side, so that we can help people make decisions based on science. And lastly, the comment was made, are we ready for change and are we willing to change? I think it's a great question. I think there's a lot of people that are ready to change but don't know what to do. There's a lot of people who are not ready to change because they don't want to lose what they have and not willing to give up where they currently are. I think it's a question that should fundamentally be at the very start of everything we do. We need to be willing to make this change, and we need to have the right evidence-based science to support this change, and we need to promote a more equitable and sustainable future for all. So I want to leave it at that as a somewhat summary of this. I know there's more detailed notes for others later on, but I think, I've learned a lot out of this. I have created some new contacts. I hope everybody else within SEI has done that here. It was partly the objective. And I would like to thank everybody for just being here today. I would now like to offer the floor to Johan just to try and bring this to a quick close. So, shall I leave the stage, sir? That's why you're executive director.
Exactly. Okay, thank you very much. How many feel like having a new presentation, 15 PowerPoints right now? Yes, thank you. This is a dedicated team of scientists, really. I think it's been a wonderful day. I want to check something, though. I mean, you said that this has been a day of learning and building partnerships and so on. So I want to check that. How many can say that they have learned something new today? Well, at least one thing. Raise your hand. Okay, so we have to check on that. We have a few people, of course, who feel that they already know everything, so that's okay. How many feel that you have built at least one new contact? Have established one new contact? Wonderful. How many feel that you have actually now started to discuss even today a new idea for a project, a collaboration? This is really excellent. So that's fantastic. So, a check mark in all those things. I must say, I'm impressed by your summary, and this is what happens when an English guy and an Irish guy can work together. You can see, you can achieve wonders. So a big applaud for that summary, I must say. Before I close, I also would like to recognize that we have Dr. Montip here. I want to recognize that because this event would likely not have happened if it wasn't for you. Dr. Montip was part of the SEI Global Board at the time of the establishment of SEI here in Bangkok. And you can see the results today, and you are a big part of that, I must say. So I would really like to recognize that you're here and honor us with your participation. So thank you very much. But now we are coming to a close, and we are going to have some kind of reception, I'm sure, and it's going to be photos and all these kind of things. We will get more information about that. But the final word really from my side is to thank the SEI Asia in Asia Center, Niall and his entire team. This is not a huge center. There are 20 plus people. But it shows that you don't need to be huge to really do wonders. And actually sometimes I think that is something which is really true. It's a dedicated team of people. You have been working extremely hard to pull this together. It's been well organized. We have very good participation. The quality has been very high. And at the same time, I know that you have continued to deliver on your projects and your mandate and everything that you need to do and that you want to do here in Asia. So this has been an extraordinary achievement, I must say, of this team, the SEI Asia team. And I really would like to recognize that and thank you deeply for that. So a big applause to the team. And that will, of course, close formally today, open session. For the first time, we have hosted an SEI Science Forum outside of Stockholm, and you passed with really good grades, I must say. Things can be done even outside of Stockholm and HQ. It's a bit painful to say that, but it's the truth.
Okay, so I deliberately got to get back on stage so I get the last word. Just a quick thank you for allowing it to come out of Stockholm. It took a few years for that to happen, but delighted to have it here. So I appreciate all the support you've given us to do this as well. Right, it is closed. I don't want to keep anybody any longer, but we've got 2 minutes just for Rajesh. We decided to have a little photo competition that he wants to talk to you about, and we can have a look at it while we stand outside afterwards and have a little reception, and have a few more minutes to try and talk to some of the budding partnerships that you've started, and if not, start one, and let's make something move from this. Thank you.
Thank you. Our researchers do not just deliver science and bridge policy, they also take photographs. And we wanted to bring this visual flavor of our work to the Science Forum. We wanted to display a selection we have to showcase SEI's work from the many different locations in the world. Outside, when the doors open, you will see about 20 photographs. We hope you enjoy viewing these photographs during this networking break and find inspiration from them. 2 quick things. One is that we have a poll, because we have prizes, of course. In the event app, you can find a little poll in the menu, and you're allowed to choose one photograph that is your favorite. No electoral hacking, so just one photograph. And the second thing is, the top 3 photographs will be given prizes at the end of the Science Forum on Thursday. The researchers who've sent in those photographs will be given prizes. So enjoy your break. Light refreshments and snacks will be served.